There are moments in history that don't just turn a page, they rip it right out and start a whole new bloody chapter. Today, we're digging into one of those moments, a supposed naval battle that never actually happened, and a lie born from a mix of confusion and pure ambition that dragged a whole nation into one of its longest and most devastating wars. Let's get into the story of the Phantom attack in the Gulf of Tonkin. Open aggression on the high seas. Can you imagine hearing those words? It's late on August 4th, 1964, and President Lyndon B. Johnson suddenly breaks into your TV program. He's telling all of America that the nation is striking back. But striking back against what exactly? This is where the official story kicks off, and, well, where the truth starts to fall apart at the seams. All right, Section 1, a president's dire announcement. Let's start with the official story, the one everybody was told. So in this really serious speech, LBJ tells the whole country that U.S. destroyers were victims of unprovoked aggression in international waters. That one word, unprovoked, was everything. It was the entire justification for a massive military escalation. But behind all that certainty, the real story was a whole lot messier.
Okay, moving on. Section 2, secret missions, real combat. Because to really get what happened, you have to understand what was going on before that fateful night.
So these U.S. ships, like the USS Maddox, they weren't just out for a Sunday cruise. They were on these things called DeSoto patrols, super secret missions to collect electronic intelligence. They would sail incredibly close to the coast of North Vietnam, basically poking the hornet's nest, daring them to turn on their coastal radar so the U.S. could map out their defenses. These were absolutely not passive missions. They were designed to be provocative.
And believe me, it gets even crazier. At the very same time, a top-secret program called O-Plan 34A was running these hit-and-run raids against North Vietnamese targets along the coast. And these raids were being carried out by U.S.-backed commandos. So while the DeSoto patrols were listening, O-Plan 34A was attacking. So when you put those two things together, this whole idea of an unprovoked attack, it doesn't just look shaky, it's pretty much impossible. Which brings us to August 2nd. That's 2 full days before the Phantom attack we're talking about. Just after one of those O-Plan 34A raids, 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats came out and attacked the USS Maddox. Now this was a real fight. The Maddox fired back, got hit by a single bullet, but that was it. And this is a huge deal because it proves 2 things right off the bat. 1, North Vietnam was absolutely willing to fight back, and 2, their actions were a direct response to U.S. covert operations. All right, Section 3, a desperate battle against phantoms. So with all that context, let's jump into the absolute chaos of the night of August 4th. I mean, picture this. It is pitch black out there. No moon. A storm is churning up the sea, making visibility 0. The crews on the Maddox and the other destroyer, the Turner Joy, were exhausted, they were on edge, and they were basically blind, relying completely on their screens to tell them what was happening in the dark. And right then, in that perfect storm of bad weather and high stress, their own gear starts lying to them. The rough seas were creating false blips on the radar, ghost ships. The sound of their own propellers was bouncing back and being misinterpreted by totally panicked sonar operators as incoming torpedoes. They were literally in a firefight with ghosts created by their own equipment and the storm. So for hours, these 2 U.S. destroyers are just blasting away, firing something like 350 shells into a completely empty black ocean. And get this, the guys on sonar, totally convinced they were being swarmed, reported a mind-boggling 22 separate enemy torpedoes in the water. But here's the billion-dollar question. After all that chaos, all that fighting, where was the evidence? I mean, anything. There was no wreckage, no enemy sailors bobbing in the water, no oil slicks. The pilots flying overhead saw absolutely nothing. There was 0 physical proof that an enemy had even been there. Okay, Section 4, a commander's warning ignored. Because when the sun came up, the guy in charge out there started to realize something was very, very wrong. And what he said next should have stopped everything in its tracks.
This, right here, is the smoking gun. This is the cable that should have prevented the entire war. Captain John Herrick, the commander of the whole destroyer group, sends this urgent message back to Washington. He's basically saying, whoa, hold on a second. I think we might have made a terrible mistake. He blames freak weather, and overeager sonarmen, and he is practically begging them, suggest complete evaluation before any further action taken. He's telling them, please, let's figure this out before we do something we'll regret.
Okay, this timeline just lays it all out. And it's pretty damning. In the morning, President Johnson gets this initial flawed confirmation, and he immediately starts planning how to hit back. But then boom, at 1:27 p.m., that cable from Captain Herrick lands in Washington, the ones screaming, wait, this might not be real. They had the truth, or at least a massive reason for doubt, right from the commander on the scene. And still, that night, LBJ went on national television and told the entire world the exact opposite. So you might be asking, how on earth did they just ignore their own commander? Well, under incredible pressure to provide proof, the intelligence agencies kind of cooked the books. We now know from declassified reports that they took signals intelligence from the real battle on August 2nd, repackaged it, and passed it off as brand new, vital evidence of an attack on August 4th. They made the intel fit the story they wanted to tell, not the story that was actually true.
I mean, just look at this side by side. Is night and day, isn't it? On August 2nd, you've got a real attack, real damage, a confirmed report from the commander, the whole shebang. August 4th, zilch, nada. No confirmed enemy, no damage, a commander full of doubt and manipulated intel. The entire case for war was built on that second column, not the first.
And that brings us to our final section, the blank check for war. The lie was now official. And the consequences? Well, they were catastrophic. Based entirely on this phantom attack, Congress rushed to pass something called the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. And this wasn't a formal declaration of war. No, it was something way more dangerous. It was, for all intents and purposes, a blank check. It basically gave the president the power to go to war all by himself, cutting Congress right out of the loop on one of its most important constitutional jobs.
And you'd think there'd be some debate, right? Nope. Look at these numbers. 416 to 0 in the House. 88 to 2 in the Senate. I mean, it's almost unanimous. A whole country marching off to war, and the entire thing was built on a lie about a battle that never even happened.
And because of that blank check, the conflict exploded. Over the next decade, 58,220 Americans lost their lives in Vietnam.
But the cost for the Vietnamese people was it's almost impossible to comprehend. We're talking an estimated 3 million people, soldiers and civilians alike, a staggering, unimaginable loss of life, all of it tracing back to one confusing night on the water and a deliberate choice to ignore the truth.
So, in the end, what have we got? We've got a moment of total chaos at sea that got twisted and used by leaders who desperately needed a simple story of good versus evil. They chose the convenient lie over the inconvenient, messy truth. And it really leaves us with a question that's just as important today as it was back then. When everyone is screaming for certainty, what is the true cost of pushing doubt aside?